Agribusiness, brought to you by SureCrop. Quality liquid crop nutrition delivered right to your farm.
Justin, thanks for joining us this morning. It's good to see you.
Always good to see you, Brian.
Hey, recently the state of Kansas got, I don't want to say bad news, well it probably is bad news. Congressman Huelskamp was removed from the Agriculture Committee. What kind of impact does that make for the state?
Well, you're right. It certainly is a disappointing news. Haven't quite seen all the details on it yet, but have seen the headlines about that. And you know, it's as far as thinking about where Kansas is, and especially Congressman Huelskamp's district, the 1st district, the amount of agriculture and the impact that agriculture has to the economy in western Kansas, in that big 1st district. It's disappointing to think that representation won't be on the House Ag Committee, especially when you look back at the long history of that first, going all the way back, you know, to Bob Dole being represented on that House Ag Committee, and of course then on up through the change with Senator Pat Roberts and Senator Jerry Moran, and the importance it is to farmers and ranchers out in that 1st district to have that voice on the House Ag Committee. It's really disappointing to think that we're not going to have that, considering we've had that for so long.
Well, not only the farmers out there, but to the communities out there as well. And I think a lot of people forget the economic impact farming has on the state's economy. No support from Washington makes it a little tougher on those farmers, which in turn makes it tougher on those small rural communities as well.
Absolutely, Brian. You know, you think about the economic downturn that our nation has been in, and if there's been any bright spot or any glimmer of hope, it's been our ag sector in that economy. And it's really the lifeblood of a lot of those rural communities out in that big 1st district. And so not having that representation, that voice on that House Ag Committee is certainly disappointing. And I know there's a lot of ag groups in Kansas that are going to express that disappointment, and hopefully they can get things figured out. But somehow we've got to make sure we've got that voice and that representation.
What does that committee exactly do, Justin? A lot of people may be watching the show this morning and go, well, big deal. But it really is a big deal. What does that committee really do?
Well, it does quite a bit. Obviously, the one that's probably most paramount right now is the Farm Bill discussions, where the Senate Ag Committee has passed a farm bill, a Senate version of the Farm Bill. It comes out of that committee, goes to the full Senate. Full Senate has passed that. So now the House Ag Committee needs to pass a farm bill that would go to the full House. And once it gets passes the full House, then the House and the Senate versions get to sit down in a conference committee, and that's where the Farm Bill gets hashed out. And so having that voice at the early stages of farm policy through that House Ag Committee is extremely important and vital in the early part of that process.
And the last few minutes, or the last minute we have to hear together, I think a lot of people, especially out in western Kansas, those small rural communities, when you hear ag bill, it's really more than ag bill. I mean, there's food subsidies, everything, school lunch programs, all of that are wrapped into what is called a farm bill. So it's more than farming.
Absolutely. And when you think about the importance of farm policy from just, you know, when you think of the importance of crop insurance, especially in the year that we're having now, coming off of an extreme drouthy period for our fall crops and the conditions that our wheat crop is under right now, having that farm policy and having Kansas's, you know, because if you don't have that Kansas representation, because growing regions are different across the United States and concerns and issues are different across the United States. So if you have a smaller ag production area, whether it's on the East Coast or West Coast, that has a more direct voice than the main producing areas in Kansas, like the 1st district, on that farm policy, it can be really detrimental to the long-term effects for the benefits of Kansas farmers and ranchers and ag communities.